got all the Rhino force feedback gear in, the box with the motors, and the other gear is here. And then underneath these papers is all the pieces for the frame and the hardware, the fans, and the gimbal assembly. And then I printed out the instructions that were provided. There's also some differences between what's in the instructions and what this kit involves. And again, this is the motors and from VPforce. However, this is the do-it-yourself home kit that Winger was providing, and I know his name is Rolf. Can't pronounce his Discord name, but he's shipping now. So it's a pretty nice kit. Everything's well laid out in here. Everything's bagged nice. I went through. There's a parts list at the beginning of this. I went through and verified everything was here. Probably still have to refer to that because I don't really understand how some of this works. But we'll figure it as we go along. I figured I'd do a DIY build. I'd record it because I couldn't find anything out there to help me. Some stuff on other force feedback sticks, but not this particular one that I can find. So my struggles and everything I'll leave in here. I'll leave most of my comments in here. The only time I'll cut the video is if I get up to walk away to get something or get frustrated. But I don't think I will. It looks like a pretty easy kit to build. The one thing that is nice about this kit is this whole assembly comes pre-assembled. So there's it takes, I think, pages 10 through 16 out of the whole instruction set because they provide you with the gimbal assembly completely finished off. And just looking at it, it's a really nice quality gimbal assembly. So that'll help speed up the build a bit. I did have a hard time finding this boot because it was in the bag, kind of folded up. It looked like the color of the white bag, and I thought, oh my God, where's the boot? But it is in there. Just got to dig a little bit deeper. So I'm going to put some of these notes to the side. I'm going to put this to the side. I'm going to start off right here where we start putting the yoke assembly into the rear frame and the right frame. And you can follow along with me here as I grunt, groan, and make other comments. But it looks like from this video that from these papers, that the wire goes to the forward side of the assembly, this being the rear. So I will work on assembling it that way. This piece is over here. You can see the fan is pre-installed too. Another nice little thing about this kit. I will get these two sides put together. Or certainly attempt to. See what I can do here. Okay, there's some bearing holders that have to go together, but I think I'm going to put the screws into this one to hold these two panels together. That'll keep this from moving around on me while I assemble the rest of it. So let me find, these are all hex head screws, and I believe these are all the black ones that hold the outer case together. All these bags are labeled, which is nice. I imagine this is going to be a long video, but you'll at least get to see everything I have to go through to put this thing together. Quite excited to try it out. It's Friday night, and at the weekend, it's at my son's football game to have a chance to force feedback experience. Haven't had anything force feedback since little Microsoft joysticks. There are a lot of good things about this one. There's other ones out there. There's I think Verpal and Wing Wing have announced they're going to come out with one. Moza is just launching now. There's another DIY one based off some, what do they call them, hoverboard motors. Interesting design. I let the cat out of the bag here. I will be testing one of those later, a couple weeks, and comparing it to this. I'll also be building one of those eventually, just to see how it goes together compared to this. So I'll have a couple of these floating around, but I'll got some friends that fly with me, and I'm sure they'll be interested in trying them out too, and I'll try and get their impressions on all of these as I all these screws go together fairly easy. They're cutting in nice to the printed material. So printed material has a nice finish on it. Seems like decent quality. So let's see, we've got those two put together. Now we need to put in these outer bearing supports and inner bearing supports on 3 sides. So those are going to take these small, what are they? M316s with some nuts. I'm going to dump those all out here because we're going to go through these fairly quick. Don't know if this, no, it's of course not. Oh, maybe it will take the same head. Perfect. Maybe it'll be a 1-tool build. I don't think so. I think there's another size in there. So the other portion I need is going to be not this one, not that one. Which one is it? Ah, over here. Helps to not have a mess, but this whole place is a mess right now. Seems to be a top cover. This piece, if you look at the orientation here, we'll probably could have done this in a better order, but slide on here, and these this just punches in panel over here. So we work with this. Lined up. Okay. The bearing, the yoke assembly's pretty much in there, moving smoothly. We'll get the outer bearing retainers and the inner bearing retainers put on. The outer ones are in this bag here. This one goes on here, because it also mounts the board later. These other 3 go on the other sides of this. And again, it's a nice finish on the one side, and it's like a bed finish on the other side. All right. And then the other ones you have to be conscious of are these inner bearing retainers. And these are split retainers. Should be 8 of these. Counted them before. Hopefully I didn't lose any. 5, 6, 7, 8. And they'll go on the inside, and then they're capped off by tiny nuts. So we'll start here at the back, and we'll throw a couple screws through just to line this up. Fairly nicely. See if we can get the inner bearing retainer on it. It's gonna be a little fun because this yoke seems to want to get in the way, so I'm gonna have to push this screw out a little bit. Throw this down in here. See it. We'll work on this one perhaps first. Seem to bite into the inner bearing retainer, so that's good. It kind of holds it in place while you're trying to get these microscopic nuts on here. You can see the size of these M3s, very small. this other one lined up. Get it in there. And this looks like it may be the toughest one of all of these, just because of the location of this yoke assembly. I think we can get these two through. The rest will be a little bit easy. I'm trying to tackle these things first. Did get it through. It'll be very tight getting that nut in there. Let's see if I have any other tools down here that help this process. I'm gonna have to get a tool for that one, but that's just gonna be too tight. So we'll come back to that one. See if we can't get these bottom ones in. Slide it very easy. Half retainer on the back side. I don't know if you can get a good picture in here, but all I'm doing is lining up the holes, nothing special. Trying to get it to bite. This needs to be biting. That one in. Back to the nut on that one. And try and hold this to the top. Put some pressure on it while I screw it in. The other one's going to be fun to get the nut to line up with. Probably out of frame here a little bit, but just need to back this off a bit so I can lay the nut right on top of it and screw it back in. I will find my needle nose and tighten all these up as I go along. So that's the one side complete, except for the one nut on the back. And now we're going to work on the other side, make sure it's locked in good. Another outer bearing support. Those two in, get an inner bearing support. I'll line it up with the hole. Get that started. Get the light. screwed at this point. This is really tight areas, so if you're doing this, I hope you got small hands. Get this one to bite in there. Yep, that one seems to be. No, maybe not. There. Oh, it's finally caught. I'll tell you, if this is the most tedious part of the build, this is going to be a decent build. That one I'm not sure how I'm going to get to work. I know. Just a little bit more room in there. Found my pliers. Get them started before I get pliers on. There we go. Just have to angle it. If you angle it this way, you got a lot more room. Say a lot, it's still not a ton of room, but might be enough to. If anybody has any, is pulling these together and has some tips or tricks, it would help anybody else building it. It'll take some time to comment below. Okay, got that one. bit of vibration in here over time. Make sure these aren't gonna fall or rattle out somehow. There we go. Take these other ones while I'm in here. Sorry if this doesn't show well on the video. It's a little tough to hold it in frame, get everything lined up. So if you do one of these at home, you'll probably appreciate just how much fun this is. I guess we'll attempt to get the other nut on here. We'll have to come back to it later. This one's a little tight because this gimbal is definitely in the way here. I know I'm probably gonna have to drop this nut 7 or 8 times before I get it in there. Got it that time. I'll show you the clearance on this as soon as I get it tightened up. It's very tight. You're going to need a decent set of needle nose pliers. This clearance in here for this nut, there's just no way to get this yoke assembly out of the way. So it's a little tedious to get in there. Anyway, got almost 2 sides done here. We can move on to the other 2 sides, or at least one other side. We still have some pieces to put on before we can close up the front side, I believe. One's in the way on one side. Honestly, wish I could give you a better shot of this. It's just too tight and my fat fingers in there trying to screw everything in. Bite a little bit. Get one side lined up, swings over, and it lines up fairly well with the other side. Getting it started. This side's going to be another one that's going to be difficult to line up the screws with, or excuse me, the screws, the nuts on this side of it. So it's even worse because this fan is in the way. I'm going to take this fan out just to make my life easier. I appreciate that it's pre-installed, but for me it's in the way. This is the fan I'm referring to here. Got 4 screws. Seems like they just sort of self-tap into the printed material. So they don't fall all over the place on it. Twisting this back and forth. yank that out of the way. Now I got a little bit better room to get a nut on that one. Caught it first try. Super. Don't take it down too hard. Super impressed that worked right away. Okay, good movement there. We'll leave that fan alone for the moment, and now we're going to work on this bearing retainer here. Now this one is the different one. This one has this retainer, and you'll see later that the board supplied by Walmus goes on this side. So we'll work on putting that in next. Line up these holes. Started here. Through the hole easy. Maybe I see with some of this tedious bearing mount assembly why the pre-built ones take so long or have such a long backlog. So it can be a lot of fine work. I'm sure the designer has some tips and tricks of his own that he uses. Just starting to show. Well, again on this side I can see we're gonna have some issues. Hopefully it's the last one. Put the pipe first, and then I can put a nut behind it. lined up. A couple threads to bite and a couple showing. Try and get the everything not lined up. Oh, I think I got it. I'm gonna do this one again. Well, if you look in here, this hole is way countersunk down there, so you don't have to change fastener types. It's a good idea. See a torque spec on here, and they're plastic parts, so I don't want to go too heavy, but I want enough so it stays retained when there's vibration back here. So, see if we can get this last one lined up and on there. It's somehow lined up as we push the screw up. Hex bolt, whatever you want to call it. Easiest way to try and line this up is take the tool you're using, because it's smaller than the hole, try and push it through, line up the backing plate, and then we'll get it started. Goes through the hole. With this one I can almost hold the finger on and get this thing lined up. Let's see. Finger's just long enough. Get started. So we've got 3 sides with the bearing mounts in. We've got the yoke in here. It's a little bit sticky in those bearing mounts. I'm not sure why. Let's see. But we'll move on. still got the front one to do here. So the next portion of this, after completing through page 17, is page 18. And 18 has us tidying up these back 3 screws here. It also continues at the bearing supports, and then it has 2 more screws here, which we will do now. Those are the black screws again, smaller in the bag. They're labeled as case screws. And then this one, there's only 2. We'll get those put in. I love how this whole thing Legos itself together and held down with screws. I've had a 3D printer for a while. I could never get the one I have to work correctly. Thinking of getting a Prusa or Prusa, or however you pronounce that. Seems to be a lot of the Mark III S's or Mark III S Pluses on the used market around here at a fairly reasonable price. So we'll see. I'm sure my friend who's got an XL that I've asked him several times to print things will be really happy if I buy a printer, and I quit bugging him about doing work for me. But that's where we're at right now, and I'm gonna get some stuff and be right back. I dropped a nut earlier, and I wanted to make sure I found it before the last bearing assembly. These things are very small. I didn't want to make a run to the hardware store. They give you just enough. There's no overpack in here. So be very careful with these, or work in an area that has a mat, not messy like I am. Work in an area that you have a mat or something that you can find these things easily. So anyway, we're assembled here. The one detail I want to point out, and it's shown on this next page, if I can find one of the bearing keepers. So this has 2 sides. There's a little ridge sticking out, and you want to make sure that is facing into the bearing, and this area is the side that has the nut on it, the side without the ridge. The ridge helps force that bearing in there and hold it tight. So I did start the first one the wrong way. I corrected that, but make sure you keep that in mind, because that page doesn't show up until after you start putting the bearings together. So perhaps that should be pushed up further in the instructions. So the next part's a little bit fun. We get to work with the motors. There's 2 motors in the Walmus. I hope I'm saying his name right, kit. And they are labeled pitch and roll. So it says here the pitch motor mounts to the right panel. Now the right panel, when we're putting this thing together, was this longer panel here. So I imagine there's no real direction where these need to face, because they're just providing circular motion. However, the connector's on top, or both connectors. So you'll probably want to have these things mounted so that those are easily accessible. I'm not even sure that the wires are long enough should you accidentally mount them the wrong way. These are just 4 bolts, again, X-head bolts, 2 sizes up from the last one. Oh, maybe 3 sizes up, yep. So we'll work on just getting some in here finger tight. I want to get some of these bolts out. Since we're going to go through the whole bag, we'll get them all out. And again, check the alignment. You want that facing upward. Put these in here, and simply lining the holes on the motor face mounts up, putting these bolts in. Obviously you're not going to cram tighten them down. I'll show you once I get this first one in that there's play within the socket, within the hole that they go into, and that's, I guess, designed for adjustment. I'm only speculating here because I haven't gotten that far into it, but that would seem to be the logical reason. We'll just take these down so they don't flop around. Adjusting these later. But if you look in here, there's play for this motor to move back and forth, and that would tighten the belt tensioner. So and this one would be the roll axis. The roll axis goes on the rear panel. The rear panel being your smaller panel back here. Again, I think in this case, I don't think you want them up because it'd be a real pain in the ass to get to them, and then of course this is always hitting the wire. So I think in this case, facing out this way probably makes more sense. I may be proven wrong as I get later in the instructions, but that's going to be my guess for now. That way you can connect the wires, get a good visual read on them while connecting it, also for disconnecting, and then also not having the wires smack up against the bottom of the yoke assembly. These motors, I mean, for such small motors, and I imagine there's pretty hefty magnets in here, they're pretty hefty. Not sure how much they weigh. I guess I got a postage scale upstairs. I could try it out, but got some significant weight to them for the size. Too tight. This one is finger tight on these. There we go. So now it's starting to weigh a few pounds. But now we're really seeing it start to come together. So again, if you look at the way these, the spacing, amount of space you have in this panel, I don't see how you could get bigger motors in this design. They would smack into each other or run outside the panel. I know there are bigger motors out there. People have modified the design for those, but I don't see how that's going to work in this design. So again, it just says pitch and roll, make sure to mount them properly as neatness counts. So snug but not too tight, you can position it later. We've got it all in the right place. So this page is done. My good friend, the bearing mount, the last one to do. So in this page it says install the left panel to the mid panel, and with M4 screws, ensure the gimbal bearing retainers and screws are lined up as well. And then we're going to attach, you can see, putting on this side plate, attaching the bearing retainers, and then we're going to mount this electronics board, which is part of the Walmus package here. Probably open this up. I know I'm probably butchering his name, but I don't have cue cards for this, sorry. Electronic section. Make sure you're careful with this, not like I am. A little warranty claim. So the electronic section is just this tiny little thing here. Again, that'll mount this side. This will mount to this plate right here. We'll get to that in a minute. I don't want that in there and a chance to get broken while I'm putting another set of bearing mounts in. I'll pull this to the front. This cable is supposed to be routed from the joystick up here down through this front plate. So don't get it caught over here when you're putting the side piece on. I don't think you'll be happy with the results. So this is the side piece. The nicely finished side goes out. And you just gotta line up all these Lego pieces so they work. Line up the outside. And then we're gonna put some screws in here. Again, these black screws are the case screws. There's 2 that go into the side here, and I believe 3 that go into the back side over here. So we'll take out 3, and 2 more. We started with the finger. I'd much rather play with hardware than software. I'm horrible at diagnosing software. Love playing with the hardware. I was airframe mechanic in the Navy. Did stuff with defense aerospace all my life. Still doing it, but I've always enjoyed hardware side. Software, that's for somebody else. These work. See, this isn't biting into the panel here, so take a little bit of adjustment, maybe. There we go. Maybe if we hold these started over here. This is not as big as I had pictured it. I realize there's dimensions out there. I haven't really looked at those, but I was thinking this would be a little bit bigger. It's quite a compact design. Compact. It's bigger than any joystick base you've ever seen. But it's compact for what it does. So maybe that'll help some people in tighter builds. I have quite a bit of room on my self-designed or self-mangled 80-20 kit over there that I fly all my stuff out of. I'd like to build another one eventually, so I have a commercial setup and a military setup, and I don't have to have twice the gear laying around, and also have to kind of unplug and plug things and play along like that. So, all right, other side panels on. Like I said, quite a bit of heftiness to this. So we will work on putting in this bearing keeper, and once I get that installed, we'll be back. Back at it. One thing I wanted to point out, and I'm not sure if it was clear in the instructions or not, but they had us mount the motors before putting on this left panel. And having this motor here kind of prevents you from accessing the bearing support back here. So I would leave this motor off until you get the panel on, all the bearing supports completed, and then go back and attach this motor. Also keep an eye on the orientation. You want to be able to access these wires easily and not have them in the way of the old yoke assembly. Apologize for not showing you that last bearing assembly. it went like the others. You really can't get a good view. Maybe if I had a camera overhead or something, I'm not that fancy. But it installs just like the others. It's nothing special. Just as difficult as the others can be, getting those tiny little screws held in, or nuts held in place. So this whole gimbal assembly is all, I keep calling it yoke. This whole gimbal assembly is all tightened up and functioning well. The next part will be mounting, pull this fan wire back here. The next part will be mounting this the electronics board to this assembly right here. So we're going to pull these 4 screws. On the diagram, it shows the wire block on the outside. So here's the wire block matching up to the way that is. So that's the way we'll assemble it. But first, you got to take off the mounting screws. These don't seem to be the same size naturally. They kind of are. Sure. Maybe Phillips or just really kind of cheap thin heads. These have a ball end on it, and they just don't seem to agree with the ball end. One of them doesn't. This one's coming out a little bit easier. Yeah. I wonder if these are so, it just mounts here. This will pull this piece of plastic off that's holding the fan screws, fan wires from flopping around. We'll get this started off camera or out of really good view here. Again, I find this design is pretty clever. Putting it together is honestly not that difficult. And my understanding of all the reviews and comments and everything I've seen, well worth the effort and well worth the money. They aren't cheap by any definition. Yeah. This is a little bit challenging. 10. The T10 seems to work better here. Still tiny as hell. Well, it worked better on one. Yeah. Wish I had a better set. It's a crappy one, but it's biting with the T10. So, stick with it. Some more screws to go. We can start wiring this baby up. I kind of peeked ahead at, we're really getting to the fun part of the build, wiring it up, and then hopefully playing with it right away. Well, maybe I should have put this in early. I just didn't want to take the chance of breaking off a socket or screwing something up. Tight with that tool against this wall. Give me a ton of room. If I can get it started. Certainly I have room now. One more to go. Save the most fun for last. I would say if you're somebody who has really fat fingers, might want to get your kids or your wife to help you set some of these screws, position them, because some of these areas are tight. I really want to get this together for the weekend because I like to do some testing and obviously DCS, but I also like to test it in L2, tested Microsoft Flight Sim, X-Plane, just a little bit of everything, and see how much I smile. May not get a chance to do a video right away as I dial it in. I'll try and capture as much as I can, but some of it may be without commentary. I'm sure some of you are cheering on that there'll be no commentary. That's what I'm afraid about with this thing. I'm gonna pick this up and get a little bit closer. Just squeeze in here. Well, ain't going anywhere. So that's all assembled. Gimbal's up. I'm calling it the yoke. It's a gimbal. Motors are in. Motors have accessibility to their wiring. both here and up here. So next, I believe, is going to be the wiring, or perhaps another piece like the top. We will see. So it says, yes, connect power wire from both motors to the main board, and connect the data wire lead from both motors to the main board. And rotate the grip wire between the mid panel and the pitch, and I showed you to put that out earlier, and connect that to the main board. So that's this wire. There is a wiring diagram. I think it's fairly early in this. Now these are the used ones. It's fairly early in this setup. Shows how the board is wired. There's a nice parts list in here if you print it out and you plan on making another one, or just looking for some spare parts, or you want to build one for your friend. Yes. So here's the wiring diagram. And if you look over here, the fan motor goes here, and then the motors mount here, and then there's an RS-485 cable that goes on motor 2 to the bottom one, motor 1 to the top one. What else is on here? Obviously the power, DC power side, and the joystick side, and then the 2 pots and the USB. Now imagine this one right here. By the size of it will be the joystick connector. So we'll get to work on wiring that up. I believe the wire leads are a little bit longer than necessary, but that's good. We can cut them down if we need to. We'll have to take a pause. I need a very small standard screwdriver to be able to wire the motors to that terminal block. And this is the little bag of wires you get in Walmus's kit. It includes the blue and yellow being the motor wires, and this being the RS-45 cable, smaller ones, and then the USB cable, very important. Oh, that's where the joystick side goes, so it will be down here. There's nothing that goes in the center one that I can tell. So I will get that screwdriver, we'll come back, we'll begin the wiring on this. We'll get all that hooked up. After the wiring, I believe it starts buttoning up again with putting the top on, because there's more wiring with the potentiometers involved here. And then once we get it all closed up, we can start putting on the pulleys and belts. Then it's fun time. Back in a minute. Okay, we're back. Just looking over the instructions here on the electrical connections. It says motor 1 and motor 2. Slightly confusing because these are marked as pitch is motor 0 and roll is motor 1. So I'm going to assume that 0 should be 1 and 1 should be 2. I'll probably assume wrong, but that's what we're going to go with. And if we're wrong, well, I just have to switch these out. Now, I could cut these, and I probably should cut them just to clean this up a bit. However, first build, I'm not messing with anything. I'm not going to try and cut anything. I am just going to do it as is. slightly confused as to, I get it. So there's a multi-pin connector on here, and there's a 2-pin connector. And you're given a 2-pin connector and yet another 2-pin connector. Actually, these are tied together, but they'll have to be split apart for this to work. And what happens is on the multi-pin connector, you got to look at the orientation now. So on the multi-pin connector, if we're looking at it correctly, the RS-45 ports would appear to be the first 2. And there's some coloring on this, so I want the long dash lines. I guess it doesn't really matter because this only fits in one way. Oh, it's next to that pin. So it isn't the, so there's a slot in here, a little, not a relief, it's not a slot, it actually sticks up, and it's a little channel, but it's a little bump in here that aligns with this socket right next to this multi-pin connector. So you want to make sure you align that up before you push it in. Obviously only one way to go in, one would hope. So I want to make sure this is straight up and down. It is, it's in. We'll route this over the other motor. This one is motor 1. So we're going to call this motor 2, since it's just 0 and 1 and Walmus's numbering system. And that goes into the bottom one. And then this one is motor 0. This is back in here, so it's a little tight. I will show you when it's done, but it's easier for me to do it this way, and I apologize that you can't see it, but same premise. You line up the little slot. Helps if the motor's as far forward as possible. And I kind of hold that there while I get this in there. Trying not to bend any pins, as I would cry if I had to wait for new motors. So that's in there. And I'll just put a little knot in there to tie up some of the extra wire. Again, there's a little slot in this connector, and you want to just get that plug lined up. Don't bend anything, push it in. So those are the communication cables that are set up. Next thing we're going to do is set up the, well, I guess we can plug in the fan, since that's just dangling over here. So the fan, same thing. There's a double what I want to say, there's a double ridge in the front. We got that in there. So that's connected, fan 1. The other fan will go on. These two are for the potentiometers. This is the USB, and then down here will be your multi-pin that'll go up here, which is sticking out, so we can plug this one in. This one also has two keyways set up so that you can't mess it up unless you bend the pins. So that is in. USB still needs to go in. We don't have that set up yet. I think that comes in a later stage. So all that is left right now is to wire the power. And so you got a dark and a light. Dark being the blue, light being the yellow. We will wire this we will clamp this onto the motor. It's got a little clip here, retaining clip, so keep an eye on that. We have to strip the ends of this. Probably not the neatest way to strip anything with a set of needle nose, but it works. Maybe a little bit more wire exposed. I mean, you're going into this terminal block, you don't need an inch of wire sticking out. Just enough to get it seated and screwed down. So I will count up. The first two are, you can't really see that there. So these first two are for the stop switch. You go into here, and then the dark wire goes into number 3 from the bottom, and the light wire goes into number 4. So we will open up number 3. That's the dark wire. I guess these were open. And then we'll put the light wire in number 4. Tighten that one down. I just want to make sure that this is motor. Got that backwards. This is the pitch motor, which is motor 0. So I want this clip, and thankfully these have these nice clips on it, so you really don't have to, you screw up, just pull it and put it in the other one. This will go on the bottom one, and this is named roll number 1, and it goes into, I guess, motor 2 here. Really not very clear, but that's what I'm reading. And then our other wire, I have to strip a little bit of the end of this. This probably is just good staying tied up. A little bit more. I'm a professional electrician here. You should stay away from solar panels and other electricity. This wired in. Terminal block tightened. It's not pulling out, not touching anything else. This one, a little bit more wire. There's that, and that'll clip to this one. Just clips in like that. I realize the wiring's not neat when it's all done and I know it's working correctly. I'll come back here and tidy all that stuff up. This is where we stand now. I'm getting pretty excited. This is getting close. I guess this sheet is a shift register wiring for the VPC main board if you're using a shift register. I'm not using VPC. The only VPC or vertical gear I have is for the Apache Collective, and then I have some Space Sim gear. So I won't be doing that. I am back at this phase of it. This is the area we just completed. So we've got the motors in, we've got the board in, we've got the bearing retainer in, the last one. I showed you that you want to pull this motor out to get at this bottom inner bearing retainer, otherwise you'll never reach it. So that is all set. We've wired up the board with that. Next up is looks like the top mount reset switch and potentiometer to top panel. So we will do that. Oh, that's done. So this is the reset switch and the potentiometer are comes pre-mounted. Well, I should say that the potentiometer comes pre-mounted. The reset switch is still has to be mounted. So we will look for that one next. In the pile of stuff. This giant thing looks like it. And it also goes to the power cord. So this is all one big assembly when you get the winger kit for the DIY build. Power is on this. This will route its way to the first two terminals in this main board. I believe it probably doesn't matter which direction because you're just interrupting the power with this. You're not powering anything. So we will work on putting that through this hole. Actually, first we'll work on taking the retaining nut off. And then we'll work on putting that through this hole. Make sure all the wires go through. None of the wires on the back side are interfering or catching. It's a pretty good tight fit in there. Put that retaining nut back on. Make sure you capture that wire. Otherwise you'll be loosening it to retighten it. Hold it down. Pull the other wires out of the way. Just get it started there. On. I think I'll use my use some channel lock pliers. Just grip that down a little bit. Not too tight, but enough that it's not going to roll around in there. So stop, and then you can reset it by twisting it. Hopefully you never have to use it, it's just decoration. That's in there. We talk about putting the fan on the other panel. I'll show you that this kit comes pre-mounted with the fan on that panel here. So that work's already done. The next thing it wants you to do is secure the top panel with the M4 screws. Seems to be 10 of them. Make sure the potentiometer and all these wires are tucked away so they don't get in the way. So I don't see anything in the build that would stop us from doing this. I don't see any out of order kind of work going on here. So I think we're going to stick with the build plan and do that next. And again, it's, snapping Legos together. There's nothing loose about this. It's a very tight fit, but it's very good. Get some screws into this, it'll help hold this down. So we're back to the black screws, the case screws. There's 10 of them. I'm going to dump a couple out here. I have one silver one for some reason. I don't know. This quality control messed up. Doesn't really matter. This is down low on the rig when you're flying. Nobody really cares what it looks like. So these screws seem to go not in these front two holes, but around these back ones. And of course there's holes here, 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 and here. The boot cover will go on. So watch which holes you're putting these screws in. Don't put them in, I guess now, easy ways, don't put them in anything that doesn't have a countersink in them. And then you won't be taking them out again. This, we may be up late tonight trying to get the software in and take it for a few test flights, at least in DCS. I do have to dismount my other stick, and I got a QR4 rigs plate down there that I'll have to move over to make room for this. So it'll take me a little bit, but it'll be worth it. I'm missing something in my search for build videos of this. I honestly couldn't find any. I could find bits and pieces from a couple of years ago as it was just being designed, but nothing directly walking through a whole build. I did watch the what's the other one, the Beast being built by a guy who did got a couple of 4-hour live streams as he built it. I don't think anybody wants to hear me for 8 hours blabbing on a live stream. We've got 1, 2, 3 more to go there. Go ahead and use the silver one. What the heck? Glad I got this in. I have a work trip coming up. It's gonna put me in the Middle East for a couple of weeks, so I really wanted to have an opportunity to fly this before I go. Obviously, I'm not lugging this thing in my suitcase. It happens to be in Abu Dhabi, third week in September. Happy to buy you a beer. So it says mount 10 screws. I want to count this. I want to make sure I'm not missing any because there's screws on the side that still need to go in. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm going to say that was the 10. So make sure the wires are out. Connect the E-stop switch plug. Connect the E-stop switch plug. Really not sure what that is. Okay. I guess that's connecting here to the board. Go ahead and do that. I actually have to find my power supply that I ordered. for this. Not sure where I put it. Perhaps if I wasn't home, where somebody else in the house put it. So these connectors are a little bit thicker. They got some crimp plugs on the end. Or just, I think it's just tin wires. Just want to make sure nothing's really exposed here, because this is where the power's flowing through. Like I said, I think it's 30 amps. I'm not quite sure. I'm going to pull 30. My power supply is 24 or something. Okay, so that's in, and I guess this gets routed somehow to the back here, and becomes part of this, and it just locks in. It pushes in, I should say. So, let's see. Insert plug and plate to the rear. Both these are already in there. Snap USB plug into the outer retainer plug. Outer retainer plug. That goes on top of the joystick. This one here. The wheels. These are the knobs for the top. All these bags are done. So all right, we will proceed with installing the USB. That's the upper connector. And if I put the power connector in, I'll have a hard time reaching it. So USB, power. Heck, does that go? No, I guess it goes in from the outside. Okay. Well, that makes sense, kind of. Except, yeah, it's like getting the wires. Doesn't really make sense. So this is going to be another one I take apart to make it work. It looks like another set of these T10 screws. This just goes in like that. And this cover slides. You can see it. USB just falls into that cutout. And this, I don't want bending the wires. We'll do it this way. So this cover has to slide over this to retain it. And if your wires are facing up, or towards the side of the, I guess down is the bottom of the case, then it can be a little bit tricky because you don't want to bend this plug and you don't want this thing to kind of fall. It's in there. So I am going to wire it this way. So when I put it in, it's retained. I can get a couple of these screws in there. remember these are appear to have a Torx head on it or something. I mean, the T10 Torx works on them. If there's another tool or I'm missing something, comment. But definitely not hex head. I know this says test everything before you close it up. I don't want to say I don't see a need to do that, but I do want to say that if it's a matter of pulling out some of these screws, it's really not that hard. Should I have an issue with wiring or power or something. So the USB has 2 channels, and it will go right above the joystick card, or joystick plug. That's right there. So really what we have left is here, let me finish wiring this. This is going to have to go on the side. Chase around. So this comes out here. Now, what they'll tell you on this power plug is glue it, super glue it. And I just so happen to have some super glue. I'll try today not to glue my fingers to it. Put a little bit on. We'll try to put a little bit on here. Choose your own favorite super glue. This happens to be Gorilla. Probably sat in the garage for 4 years. But it sets up nicely, very quickly. So that's done. It's starting to look pretty promising, folks. Get those flywheels on, get those belts on, we'll get moving. So that's the USB and the power plugs. Everything seems to be set up there. No issues. I do want to refer back to the wiring diagram to understand pot 1 and pot 2. I'm going to guess this is another one where it's not labeled. Okay, so we'll connect these pots, whatever order we feel like, and we'll adjust it should we need to. There is wire ties, as I said. Once I'm sure everything's functioning correctly, I'll come back here and clean up this mess of wires. Power sockets in, so that's done. Now it's saying install the front cover. The front cover has the big fan in it. Obviously, before you install it, you probably want to connect the fan connector. There's 2 fan connectors. One's already connected. This one just goes in the other one. And make sure you don't bend any wires. Oddly enough, I guess that's because of the spacing. Oddly enough, the fan doesn't go against the motor, but I'm sure there's a reason for it. Only secure with M412 screws on the left and right panels. The screws for the top cover will fit the top 2 holes and the remaining top plate. Okay, so what it's saying is only secure here and here, because up here there's a plate go over this, I guess, to clean it up and marry up with the boot retainer. So we'll get to work on that. And this is probably some pretty darn boring stuff. So I will get these connected. And just sticking up a little bit. I will get these connected, screwed in. The next stuff takes us into putting the base plate on. So I'll show you that. And then we start working on the flywheel. So back in a minute once I get this cover on. Back to the bottom cover. Did run into a bit of an issue off camera. The bags with these case screws, unless I'm missing something, seem to be underpacked. This is for the top, and there's still 4 screws for that. So what I'm kind of missing here, I believe it's going to be 6. The 2 here, the 2 here, and I've only got 10 for the 12 bottom screws. So not a huge problem. I mean, I can go out to the hardware store and get some tomorrow. And I don't think I'll get them in black. So I'll probably leave some of these bottom screws out and fill those in with something I pick up at the hardware store and save at least 4 to do the upper side. So we'll do what we can. Bottom plate. Tight fit. Side doesn't. Oh, that makes sense. The pretty side is facing inside the case. So when you're putting this thing on, I thought maybe the nice textured side like the rest of this would be on the outside. It's not, and it isn't like universal. You can't flip it. So make sure that the lesser nice of the printed side is facing outside on the back. So I will work on, I'm going to put 4 of these aside because I'll need them in the top of the case, or not in the top, but in the sides. And I'll use the rest of these, 2, 4, 6, put the bottom on, which is supposed to take 12. Don't know if it's an oversight or miscount, but not a big deal. They're not expensive. It's not like a pulley was missing or something. So just a couple of screws. Put enough torque on it to rip it off with 80-20 rig, I doubt it. Probably 6 screws is pretty good amount to hold this base on. And the rest is other than the fun with the bearing retainers and having needing small fingers to reach it, I'm really impressed on how fast this goes together. It's not something I'd want to build every day. But it's not a complicated build. I know a lot of people are waiting in line for these. I would say just go build one. I don't know, price-wise, maybe it works out a little bit more if you build it versus waiting a year, whatever the current wait time is. But there's nothing difficult about this. It's a little bit tedious in the bearings, but a little patience pays off. And instead of wondering where you are in the serial number list, you'll be spending that time playing instead of on Discord hoping that your number comes up next. Not taking anything away from the creator, he did a great job, but I don't think one-man show is going to be able to keep up with the popularity of force feedback. And I'll tell you, I am really excited. I picked up the F4 when it came out, actually pre-ordered it, but I hadn't flown it because I didn't have time. I just took it out on a few flights recently, and I really like that jet, and that's an ideal jet, I think. Other than Warbirds, that's probably an ideal jet for force feedback. So I'm really excited to be able to get some missions, or at least some testing in with that. They said I may stay up a little later tonight, and if nothing else, at least get this set up so I can record some testing of it tomorrow. And other than the build, I'll do a separate video on how I'm trying to dial it in. I'll spend some time reading Discord and some of the other forums to get an idea of what everybody else is using, and use that as a starting point, dial it in for what I think works best for me. So all the screws are, case screws are in here. What we're missing here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws on the bottom. I'll run out tomorrow and get it. Don't feel like going out tonight. So there it is, folks. Except for the flywheels and the belts, top cover, and tightening everything up. Really looking like a joystick base now. And this has some definite weight to it. I don't think it's the 33, I think the FF Beast is something like 33 pounds shipping weight. I don't think it's as big as that, but this is impressive. So there's another bag of screws that is dedicated to the flywheel. It's named 74 tooth pulley. So pitch and roll gimbal flywheels go on next. 6 of these screws each. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, and then okay. And there are some washers in here. So it says use 1 or 2 washers on the screw head to keep the screws from contacting the gimbal on the inside. And install the motor. Okay, that's the next piece. So we're gonna put on these 74 tooth printed flywheels, and it appears from this that this side goes in, obviously, because there's no way to mount it without rubbing this way. Each of these takes 6. I'm going to try with 1 washer a piece and see how it works. Make sure it's the same head. This one. So we're at probably 4 tools to complete this. Pretty good. I remember years ago was writing maintenance plans for the Super Hornet, Donald Douglas, we had a 10 tool plan for maintenance on that. I don't think we quite achieved 10 tools in the end, but it was an interesting goal. All right, so I want to get 2 of these set up so that I can align it, kind of stay in place as I put the other ones in. Started by hand. Torque's going to be here. You can see the motion of the joystick, these flywheels. I won't tighten those down yet. Let me get the rest of them in there. Kind of work a pattern, like a torque pattern maybe, just to make sure that you don't have any issues or a warp pulley. I think I can put that much stress on it. Really exciting time for flight sims, gear like this, and visuals and flight models that are available. Pretty old, and remember stuff on Commodore and geez, the old Sinclair ZX81 or Timex, I think is what they called it when they brought it to the U.S. Put the flight sim program in on a cassette tape. It looked like a bunch of sticks, but it's all you had, so it was exciting to fly. Over the years, it just keeps getting better and better. VR, do have VR here. Oh, bring that up. I'm currently running a Varo Aero, and a little displeased with the Aero going end of life, no longer being sold, and support only guaranteed through 2025. Probably not as upset as the guys who still have the HP reverbs. Glad I sold those off. But I'm looking at what's going to be next. I've put my name on the list for that Pimax Super. I will tell you, I was a backer of Pimax in the original Kickstarter. Was not impressed with their communication and delays. I actually pre-ordered a whatever it is, the Crystal Light, and got annoyed with all the vendors getting headsets before people getting headsets that had paid up money, so I canceled that order. I don't even know if I'll try the Crystal. If I do, it'll have to wait until it's actually in stock. I don't really feel like having my money sit out there to fund the development of a company. I did order a Quest 3, and I get it. The Quest 3 is, you know, a downgrade visually from the Varo Aero. I did it more so for pass-through because I got a lot of hardware gear, and I kind of want to see how it looks, you know, drawing out the hardware so that I can see that through the headset while I'm seeing the rest of the outside world. So it could be interesting. I may keep it around as something specifically to use the hardware. I know there's another one coming out. I can't remember the name of it. I think it starts with an S. But to get that color pass-through stuff, I believe it's close to $4,000. It's kind of a ridiculous amount of money, I think. So maybe I'll have to wait for that technology to cheapen up and just deal with what I have. But you know, over the whole time I've had headsets, last however many years, I've always wanted something. You know, I run 3 monitors, and I don't always run all 3, but I like the visual around me and awareness that I see stuff around me. And a lot of these headsets, or at least the early ones, it was like looking through a scuba mask. And they're getting wider, but they're just not at the point where I can kind of glance out the side and really see what I can see when I'm running triples. I used to run projectors, but projector's just not that clear. I have, they got laser 4K ones. I got a laser ultra short throw upstairs as my TV. It's nice, but during the day or in lighted conditions, you can still see it washed out. It's not as crystal clear as like a monitor or a TV. Love to try OLED, but replacing 370s with either 365s or 377s is probably not in the budget. And going back to something like a 55, I don't know if I can. I mean, my daughter's driving sim rig upstairs runs 55, so we used to have a single 65 on it and bought 355s to run on it. So, oh, see, now I'm getting some rubbing in here. This one's fine. This one rubs. I don't know. Did it screw down too much? Is that it? Let's see. It's a little bit. It's not enough to. Certainly probably not enough to have issues with the motors. Seems a little bit. Well, that's what you're going to get with these motors running. Kind of put on these aluminum, billet aluminum, machined aluminum. Where are the set screws in here? They fell out. Okay, they're still in there. These go on next. Figure out what size. These set screws are tiny. Yeah. Think we'll stick with 3 tool? Yes. Yes. So there's 2 holes, there's 1 set screw. If you look at these motors, there's a flat spot on it. Obviously, you want the set screw to hit the flat spot. So make sure you know where your set screw is. Back it off enough to get it on there. Good indication you got the right spot. And then tighten it down. And I imagine probably going to be some adjustment in here. I don't know how much you can do. Obviously, you can't reach the set screw easily when the belt is on. It says use blue Loctite on the grub screws. So I don't have any today. The last of the stuff I had dried up in the garage. I will get some of that tomorrow when I get the screws. So 1 more to go. This side here, back side. There's my set screw. This side. You can visually line it up. I should do that on this side too, just visually line up so it's looks like align the pulleys to the outer lip of the drive. Okay. Yeah, it does say to visually align it. This talks about a boot install. So a couple things was noted in the instructions here. With this kit, it does not fit with this guard around it, so it's not included. So that doesn't go on there. But what does go on top now is this plate, and there's separate screws for that one. There's 4 of these. All these little baggies out, the police will think there's a drug dealer in the house or something. It's interesting, everything else is black on top, and then these go back to silver. Don't care, it didn't buy it for the looks. Odd choice. Just kind of, it's running away, so I'm not going to work that anymore. This one comes down nice and tight. Imagine the next is going to be the knobs. And I am not going to put the boot on tonight. I don't see, I want to get this running without having something that probably isn't that easy to remove. So the boot install is not going to go on tonight, but it says blue E-stop. Oh yeah, that's the E-stop. The guard isn't there. So slide the centering tool over the stick is shown. The centering tool again is another thing that's not included with this this kit. They said it really wasn't needed in the instructions, so. So we will not put on the centering, just sort of semi-center this thing. And I'm down to page 29 and ran into belts and motor centering. So this is kind of a long one. It says, congratulations, you made it this far. It's time to connect the stick to the power. Whoa, wait a minute. Install open latest. I think I'm missing something here because I don't have the belt on. You have a short side and a longer side. The pulleys are fairly obvious which way is which, so I have to find a power supply for this, and I have to get ready to get these pulleys on here. I mean, I'm sliding them on right now, but the motors aren't really locked, they're pushed all the way out. That's the setup there. And I will be back once I get the software downloaded, and I know what I'll show you before I go that far. I got a different setup up here. So this is set up for, this is a machine metal one. Here's the connector here. We want to get this put in place, I think. Real live TV. Gives you 4 screws. Four on the outside there. 2 on the inside. No. Okay, so got a little bit. I downloaded the software, USB's plugged in, power's plugged in. This power is basically a gaming laptop power. I think this is like a Acer or something. Had the right wattage, had the right voltage. So we'll see how that works. Now it's telling me that I need to install the latest force feedback configurator, and I have that on my desktop. I will open that up. Not sure if see it very well here, but I'll do some other configs of this later so everybody can see it. But here's the application. On the web, it does have an update firmware and a connect for some web tools. Oh no. I'll get old Windows telling me it's not a good thing. That's fine. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. So, okay. It's sitting on me. I hope it doesn't crush my nuts. Install and open the latest force feedback configurator with the emergency stop button depressed. Plug in a 24-volt power supply to the base and the USB. Twist the emergency stop to unlock it and engage the motors. And it made a beeping sound. Now it says loosen the pitch side motor and slide the motor. Okay, so this is tightening the pulleys basically, this next step. Where did I put the, there it is. So we're gonna tighten the pulleys, pitch side first, which is this side. Seems to be centered. Again, this configuration gave no centering tool, said it wasn't needed. It looks like, you know, this isn't gonna flop around. Guess I really don't need a centering tool. Probably agree with them. Pulling as tight as I can. It tells you to do the outer bolts first, as it puts a little bit more tension on it, and then the inner ones. I'm not crush anything here, but this is going to have some torque on it, so I want to make sure it's good and tight. I think that's a German phrase. Really excited to see how this thing turns out. Yeah, as I said, we'll do this initial setup with this, and then I'll do another video as we go through the different games and programs and how it runs. I don't think it doesn't rub. Oh no. Seems okay. So then next it says pitch belt, hit the motor, slide the motor away, and then repeat the process for the roll pulleys. So as you see, I don't have the knobs on here either. Again, just trying to get it semi-functional tonight, and we'll have a chance to really deep dive it a little bit better tomorrow. One of my motor bolts fell out. I guess. Oh no, it's it's hidden by the. That's not good. See, I'll show you what I'm looking at in a second. Let me just get this loose here. I was getting a little bit concerned. The one bolt is kind of hidden by this pulley, but I think part of it is that bolt was tightened down too much. Let me pull this off. This motor doesn't. Ooh, no. This should definitely be farther up. It's not. We'll have to investigate this and see what the issue is, because I can't get at that bolt. This doesn't slide all the way down like it should. So we'll be right back to this. Yeah. Yeah, I don't really want to belabor this too much, but I was looking to keep these so that the connectors were accessible, and I faced it downward. But the problem is, in order to pull the motor all the way out, it strikes that connector. So I'm going to take this out. I'm going to take this out and rotate it 90 degrees. Not up, because I think I'll still have an issue here and I don't want this connector rubbing and breaking off, but I'll rotate it counterclockwise 90 degrees and we'll see if we can't get it running correctly. Okay, to wrap up the build, as far as I'm taking it, you know, the boot's going to go on later. I want to get this tested and running correctly, make sure I don't have to take it apart again. I had a few struggles just lining it up. I didn't understand I had to have these zeroed out in the software first before I put the belts on, so I got that as close as possible. what else? These little knobs. I mean, they give you two sets. This one's kind of falls off. The blue ones stick on a little bit better. Not a big deal. I mean, I'm not gonna flip this thing upside down. What other negatives? This hole didn't line up. Now, I don't think anybody can be blamed here, because the part of this build kit came from Winger and Rolf, and this machined aluminum connecting point, or the grip connecting point. This came from Walmus. I don't know if I'll run a tap in here, but I got three screws holding it. Not a big deal. Kit was short, 6 screws. Again, not a big deal. It's a couple dollars for the fasteners. I'll run down to the hardware store tomorrow before I close everything up and get that. I don't think that's gonna be a problem. And you know, putting the bearing supports on, especially on the inside, it's very difficult in a couple of areas where you have a hard time getting your fingers in there to hold the nut on the back, and even using some pliers. It's kind of tedious in there, but that's probably the longest part of the build, and a couple of screw-ups I had, not zeroing out these motors in the software before installing the belts. And then of course I had one bearing support flipped on the inside that I had to go back and change. But overall, about 3 hours to build with a couple of breaks here and there. So really easy build time, certainly better than waiting a year or more, whatever the current queue is. So if you have the time and a couple of tools, some hex head wrenches and a needle nose pliers and some basic knowledge, you can build one of these things fairly quickly. The parts take a little bit of time to get in. The kit from Winger took maybe 10 days or so, and part of that was being held up in customs and sitting in Frankfurt for a couple days. DHL's never been the most expedient shipper, but of course they're one of the cheapest ones, so no issue there. And the rest of the motors came in fairly quickly once I ordered from Walmus. That was in here. As I said, did a couple upgrades, machined aluminum here, and I added, I'll try this out later. This is a WinWing to Thrustmaster adapter. I'll see how this works in a later video. And I also added a base plate, so it's really easy to mount to the 80/20 rig. Probably won't be ideally positioned right now because I don't know, looks like the way it's going to mount, I'll be smacking my my MFDs, but we're going to test it out tonight. But if you got a couple hours and you don't want to wait in line, the kit from Winger, fantastic. And you know, the other parts come from Walmus. You really don't have a choice there. So I'm really anxious to test this out in DCS. I really want to test it out in F4 right now. But as it says, you can do a Rhino in a day. So thanks, and you got any comments or things I missed or pointers for other people, please leave it in the comment section below. Love to hear it, and I hope I helped somebody else build one of these, or at least showed them some pain points or mistakes I made, and they don't have to make the same ones. Thanks.